What's up? This is View from the Legacy View Combo Series, and this is Chillin the Green Box. And on today's show, we got two special guests with us. We got professional comic book creator John Jennings with us today. You know, he did a lot of dope books in Marvel recently and stuff like that. And Bill Campbell, comic book publisher here with today. And they're publishing the book from ages ago. One of the first superheroes, Lion Man. And they're here to talk about that as well as other things. So tell your friends, family, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we're here for Legacy to View. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Hood. This is Specks, Thompson, and the View, and this is Chillin on the Green Box. On today's show, we got two guests this time. We got Bill Campbell and John Jennings on our show. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yes,
all right.
Here. Thank you.
And for people who don't know who both of y'all are, give a little brief introduction, who y'all are and what you do. And when I say questions to y'all, just for clarity, on my screen, John starts, then Bill. So if y'all want to go that way, or y'all can chime in however y'all want to answer questions. All right, so John, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my name is John Jennings, and I am a professor of media and cultural studies. I'm also a publisher, graphic novelist, and cultural critic. And and I'm basically one of the artists on this project. So.
I'm Bill Campbell. I'm the head cook and bottle washer at Rosarium Publishing. I've written a couple things also.
Okay. And the project, John was talking about is Lion King, the Lion Man, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And we'll get more than that. But as of right now, I'm not sure where y'all from, but this show is called Chillin the Green Box. Are y'all familiar with the electrical green box that sits out front of the neighborhoods or the apartment complexes? All right, so back when I was growing up, we used to hang out right on Chillin and whatnot. Did y'all do the same thing?
Not for me. I mean, I grew up on the American side. We've been like coal miners from like the 1870s to like 1980s. So I basically grew up in like mining and mill towns.
Okay.
Pittsburgh. So that's what
I didn't come across those green boxes until much later. I grew up actually in a really I grew up in the state of Mississippi originally. And, but I am familiar with those, and that's very interesting that y'all did that.
So for clarity, we used to hang out with them. So you used to be like doing interviews, people explaining to everybody what they are. I realized there was the bus stops, like when you go to school. So that's why we hung out with them, because we meet there anyway to go to school. Then, when we home, we meet there again because it's just a common area. So this show's based off of that, because I've been on a lot of podcast shows or even watched them, and people get on for like 2 hours and talk about one thing. You never know really why I support them or even care about what they do. So I made my show so people know more about the creator and give them a reason to support them past that one thing they're doing, and they can go to like future things they have as well. So my show is based off of 4 different segments of that concept, and the first one is called Breaking It Down, because when you're on the green box, you broke things down like dreams, concepts, and ideas. So I'm finna break y'all brain down with some icebreaker questions. All right. Okay. So first question, since we all in comics, what's one hero or villain that you want to just get away, like just delete from history?
A hero or villain?
Yeah, you just tired of seeing it in the books or movies nowadays.
Okay, I'm tired of.
Yeah, you just tired of like you.
Actually, honestly, a character I'm tired of.
Wolverine.
Yeah, I never really cared for him. I thought he was alright, but he gets too much exposure, especially from the X-Men movies. I was like, there are other X-Men, and to me, he's like, Harry frat boy with stabby hands. He's not my favorite.
Why'd you, Bill?
I mean, I actually never really thought about it, but like, it's really funny because I was literally thinking about like Wolverine the other day, and just like, I was just like, after you're like 15 or something and maybe like dated once or twice, like I don't understand like the appeal of Wolverine. Like you sit up there and like he's a douchebag. Like I was just like, why? Like when you're like a little kid, you're like, oh, that's really cool. But like, the older you get, you're just like, I don't want you around either. Like, I don't even like Cyclops, but I'm just like, nah, I'm actually with you on this. Like,
I like Cyclops actually.
I would just fry him. I would just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you'd be like Canadian bacon, like you'd be like that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm a Wolverine fan, but like seeing him so much, it is too much. I think I literally read the books now and just see like what they're gonna do with him. Like, what else can y'all do with this guy?
Yeah.
It even get to the point with me that X-23 is starting to get like overused now. Like, like.
Yeah, it's a nature of those corporate comics though. They something's popular, you make more.
Yeah.
So
until you beat that dead horse and then you resurrect the horse and then you
make
beat
some
some
baloney.
more and,
yeah,
then you make like horse clones and you beat them.
You lose your adamantium, you get it back, you lose it again.
Yeah, it's like as long as they can keep kind of doing that over and over and over again. I mean,
yeah, I thought they had him like gone for a minute. They killed him off. I was like, oh yeah. Then boom, he's an old man from the future comes. Like, come on.
I mean,
yeah.
Comic characters never die, do they? Comics characters.
Uncle Ben still dead.
Oh, that's true. Uncle Ben is still dead. Except for that one with and it's funny, even with Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel they brought back, actually. I was like so disappointed. I was like, I mean, he's dead again, but I was like, that was one, that was a very poignant death that you just ruined.
Yeah.
I mean, Electros was a great death too back in the day.
Oh, that's a good point. And she's been back like 5,000 times.
That was dope. Like, it's an iconic image, like all of it. And they're like,
yeah. And now she was Daredevil fairly recently.
That the Phoenix was like some big stuff, and
yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, Alfred dead too.
Yeah, Alfred's dead. Yeah.
I didn't know.
He's been dead for like 5 years.
Yeah, actually.
Man, we might have to take a moment out the show so I can mourn.
Yeah, Alfred's a dope character. And doesn't Nightwing have like a foundation named after him or something like that?
I don't know. I know Alfred gave all his money to Nightwing. I know that much.
Yeah, and I think he created a foundation.
Okay.
Gotham.
Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah. Speaking of Gotham, which city in comic book land or whatever you call it, which I want to live in?
Oh, that's you know what? Probably for me. Well, here's the thing. So most of the Marvel stuff is New York. So that's one thing, right? So, I would think Opal City. That's Starman's stomping ground. I like it. It seemed like it was a cool town, actually. Yeah, I remember the character Jack Knight. Starman. It's one of my favorite comics. But yeah, Opal City kind of reminds me of like a cleaner Baltimore, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It's just like
that's just Pittsburgh.
It's a more like pristine Baltimore. It feels like Baltimore to me.
I'm gonna be lame. I'd like to live in New York because that's like the one thing I didn't do.
Wait, your insurance policy has to be high. Your insurance policy has to be real high.
I mean, right. Like, I mean, but yeah, like that, like especially like 80s New York when it was still like insanely dangerous and stuff. I was always like, I think I probably should have taken a crack at New York. But
I think only when I say the city that's Barry Allen has, not Wally, but Barry.
Oh, is that Coast City? No, that's
maybe so.
Yeah.
The Central City.
Where do the Teen Titans live?
Well, I know the old one was in the West Coast.
Yeah,
but now I think it's Detroit. I think. I mean, it changed the T Tower so much, but wherever is outside of Bloodhaven.
Yeah. Where is? Because I know Bloodhaven is close.
I think it's supposed to be Jersey, maybe. I don't know.
I think Bloodhaven feels like Jersey. So
it does. It always feels like they're close to New York. That's why I was like curious. I'm like, wait.
Yeah, because Gotham is New York, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, so
Well, their idea of New York. But
it's their idea of New York. Yeah.
Last question. You can bring one thing back from your past, item wise. What would you bring back?
You said item, like
Yeah.
an object or item? That's a good question.
You know what? There was one time, I think I was like 11. I won a purple stuffed pig by shooting tennis balls into like this mini basketball hoop. So the crazy thing is, I always sucked at basketball, but like that day I did it. But the funny thing is, my uncle took me with his girlfriend and her kid was my age, and he was jealous that I got a purple pig. And my uncle like dropped like so much money trying to
Trying to win it?
that thing.
Oh, that's hilarious. I
Yeah,
love
so
that.
I'd probably want that back just to like remember that day because it was like
That's
it was
pretty
a pretty
awesome.
cool day. Yeah.
I was I think I figured it out. So I actually had my grandfather had this old, like, it almost felt like a pea coat. You know what I'm saying? It had that kind of texture. It was a tweed coat. It was heavy, very heavy, and he gave it to me. You know, and it kind of actually, I don't want to get into it, but it kind of almost saved my
Okay.
life actually. And I don't know where it is now, but I really missed that coat. I thought I was like Doctor Who or somebody. You know, it was. You know, now I'm like, man, it would be really nice to have. But you know, it was my grandfather's coat. He gave it to me, and there was this incident where it was actually very useful to me. And I don't know where it went. I mean, you know, so I would like to maybe have that
Cool.
coat back.
Item of mine was the Ultimate Spider-Man #1. I actually, but look, no. It's a story. It's a story behind. So, I said in previous interviews, but it was a Spider-Man toy. It came in a Spider-Man toy. Me and my best friend both got a toy. So, you know, of course, we want the Spider-Man toy. We didn't care about the book. So, of course, we read the book, and we like everybody else. We read the book like, what kind of Spider-Man is this? Like, Spider-Man's like it's crap. So we never care about the issue. Now, 20 years later,
Yeah.
wish I had both of them because they worth so much money. Yeah, but we did. It's crazy because I feel what everybody says about that comic. Because as a kid, I'm like, this ain't Peter. Like, well, this not the one I'm used to seeing on TV or reading about. But now look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all I got for that segment. I'm gonna go to my next segment. It's called the back issues. Being the comics, you should know all about the back issues. But for the people who don't know, is when you want to know about a character origin story, you read their back issues. So, for example, you want to know about Marvel, you read his old backstory, back issues, find out his origin story. So, if you go on your back issues, find out about y'all origin stories. So, first, where y'all from, and what do y'all call y'all hood?
Let's see. I am from Mississippi. I was born in Brookhaven, Mississippi. I was raised in a small farming community called Flora, Mississippi. It's about 15 miles or so north of Jackson, Mississippi, which is the capital. And yeah, that's pretty much my hood. I grew up there, and I grew up in Jackson. You know, so central Mississippi is my hood. You know, yeah. Now I live in California.
Big transition. Big transition.
I live in Riverside. Yeah. I've been all over I've lived all over the place. Yeah, I teach like I said, at UC Riverside, which is a UC school in California, and been out here for like about a decade or so. Yeah, but the original hood is Mississippi. The new hood is California.
And for you, Bill?
Yeah, as I said before, yeah, I'm basically from like small. I'm from Pittsburgh, right? So I rep Black Pittsburgh real hard. But I hate Pittsburgh. That's like a whole other thing. But yeah, you know, I grew up in like small mining towns, small mill towns, and like suburbs, basically. Like the suburb that I'm from, which is, I mean, I did a comic book about it, but Carnegie. I mean, it was like literally the whole town was at one point a coal mine. Like when you build a house, you had to build like special foundations because like the
Wow.
hill was hollow. You know? So yeah, like it was like this kind of mix between like a suburb because it's right on the border of Pittsburgh and like this kind of like still like had like steel mill workers. Like it still had a steel mill when I was
Okay.
there. So yeah, there was no hood, man. I mean, there was a street
That's about it, huh?
where black folks lived, and we did not live on the street. We lived up on the hill, which caused like all.
Oh man. So
because I was like, we were like, there was like 3 black families, and one of them was a Pittsburgh Steeler, so he was like honorarily not black. He was a Steeler.
So
You know,
when you mean
like,
when you say still, it means somebody worked in a mine or a football player.
no, Pittsburgh Steelers.
I mean,
Right?
you talking about Steel Times, a miner, so I had to.
Yeah. So we're from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, in fact, it was Larry Brown. He actually scored the very first touchdown the Steelers ever scored.
That's dope. That's real dope.
It was dope. He was I was a paper boy. Like I delivered in papers.
So, are those little towns still around?
Oh yeah, Carnegie is like yeah. In fact, they celebrated me back in 2023.
Did they name that one street after you?
I don't. That street is actually gone. Pretty much. Like yeah, that little black neighborhood. They wiped that out. Yeah.
Okay.
Much, yeah.
Music wise, y'all listen to music?
Yes. I should have said no. Like no, I hate music.
What music, what song or artist got y'all liking music or into the genre? What song or artist got you liking music or liking that certain genre?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I would say for R&B, if we're looking at that particular genre, or like, then it'd probably be Stevie Wonder or like Donny Hathaway, someone like that. Probably Stevie Wonder, as far as like just which really kind of opened my mind about like, wow, this is amazing music, or you know what, another one who actually was really great, Sly and the Family Stone, also was a huge influence. Yeah, my mom had a really nice like LP collection. I would play Sly and the Family Stone all the time, and I know this is cheating, but also the Isley Brothers. Yeah, with Fight the Power. I used to love that song. Anyway, yeah. So as far as like R&B, that. But I'm a big hip hop fan too, and I want to say like the song that really like, or the that really kind of opened my head up to what the genre could be, or what hip hop could be, was probably Run DMC.
Yeah. All right, and for you, Bill.
Well, you don't know, but I used to be a music critic back in the day, and I was a jazz DJ in college. And like right now, I'm playing around with this little playlist thing that I'm doing called, what is it, like
Afronautica? Okay.
I'm doing like on Afronautica. It's like put it on YouTube and stuff. But let me see. So since John and I are about the same age, we kind of have like similar influences, maybe for different reasons. But my dad, my stepdad, all my uncles, like music was like literally like always playing. So like when you're talking about like funk, like that's like pretty much like the foundation, So oddly enough, my stepdad was from Teaneck, New Jersey, which is where the Isley Brothers are from. So like I had to listen to them all the time. But also because of Fight the Power, like, because you couldn't swear at all, but Fight the Power had bullshit in it. So like you could be like boom and like
all that going down.
Yeah, but so Isley Brothers is pretty big. Oddly enough, my junior year in high school, like I survived on Sly and the Family Stone's Fresh, and there's a rap going on.
Mm,
Like those were like my emotional crutches.
kind of
My big
anthems.
one was Prince. Like I'm
Oh yeah, of
big.
course. Yeah,
I'm a
Prince is.
huge like Prince was like my very first concert. Like I was 12 like when I went to, and like my mom was like that was one she like never fought me on. Like it was funny because like in the early 80s there was like all the homophobia and like the whole like satanic panic, and like all I had was like Prince and Iron Maiden
Oh
posters
yeah.
up on my wall because I love the art. Like I actually never really I've only heard like one Iron Maiden song ever in my life, but I had like all the posters because Eddie was like the greatest. I would say in jazz was Coltrane's My Favorite Things. Like that was the first album that I bought. Um, when it comes to like African music, it's Fela's original Sufferhead was
Hmm.
the big one for me. Hip hop, of course, we because I'm that old, like roller skating to Rapper's Delight to see if you can stay on your feet for all 10 minutes. Like that was a big challenge, but I would say my big revelation was because Run DMC was there, but it was LL Cool J's Radio.
Okay.
Hmm.
When I was a kid, like for some reason, like and I told my daughter, I was like, I think it hit at the right time because back then hip hop was so black people didn't like it. So like that was like like that was the thing. Then I listen to all kinds of other
Okay.
stuff too. Yeah, but those would be like those would be the the
All right,
big
that's dope.
ones.
That's dope. And
But
yeah,
there's tons,
okay.
tons. Like I literally have like about like 8,000
Dang,
albums or something.
collector. All right. Speaking of art,
Yeah.
what comic book or comic related thing got y'all into comics?
Comic related thing. I want to say like I was always really into to folk tales and mythology, from different backgrounds and stuff. So I was really big into like African mythology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, stuff like that. And my mom, was always encouraging me to read, so she actually bought me the Mighty Thor, from Marvel. And so as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's Thor," from the books I've been reading, right? And so I want to say like something like Thor was a huge, sorry, was a huge influence. S- all all the superheroes like Superman, Batman. I think the first time I realized like I was really moved by a piece of art, I think it was probably Neil Adams. As far as like just like man, I remember like this treasury edition Batman book that my mom got me, and he drew all the stories in it, and it was just that's my Batman. So I would say Neil Adams was probably like the first artist whose style I really like recognized pretty readily, and then Kirby. I didn't like his work when I was a kid. I realized he's brilliant now, but he was like, why is he drawing all of the Jack Kirby? Like, why is he drawing all the heroes I like? What I'm saying? I had no idea. But anyway, so that was so that was my entry point. After that, I just read everything that looked like a comic book. I read a lot of superhero stuff, but I also read like Archie and the Harvey comics like Hot Stuff and Casper the Friendly Ghost and stuff like that. And then when we segue into like the 80s, I start reading like a lot of horror comics from say like DC Comics and stuff. So House of Mystery, Ghosts, Tales of the Unexpected, all that kind of stuff. And also the big black and white magazines, from Warren Publishing, with like Eerie and Creepy. I'm a really big horror fan, so my mom is
Okay.
too, still to this day. So yeah, she messed me up real good, because she was like really into like Gothic literature, and like all of us were like avid readers. Like I started reading Stephen King like way too young, stuff like that. So anyway,
No.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean we're Gen X. We did everything way too
yeah,
young
we did everything.
because nobody was paying attention. Nobody
Nobody
cared.
was looking. Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
cared.
nobody was
They're
looking.
like, you live, you die, whatever.
My mom let me read Heavy Metal magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just showed her like some pictures. Oh, it's comics.
And it
Couldn't be
was.
that bad. It was Epic Illustrated. Remember Epic Illustrated from Marvel? I was like, it's pretty raunchy, man.
Yeah. Nah, I mean I saw Saturday Night Fever when I was 7 in the theater.
Yep.
You're like, and when we go back, I'm like,
As long as you're quiet, right?
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, like, oh, that's why my mom was so angry with my uncle. My god, this movie is horrible.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I used to go to like second run theaters with my mom, and we actually saw Last House on the Left together. I know that's one that kind of concerned her. She looked down at me and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I, "Yeah, I
I mean,
guess."
I guess you were young enough you didn't really realize what
I
you
didn't
were
know I didn't
seeing.
understand,
Yeah,
exactly everything,
because
but I was like,
and then we saw I Spit on Your Grave. Like, yeah, like, um, for me, for the comics thing, I mean, because like, Gen X and stuff, for the longest time they were in like convenience stores and grocery stores, so they were really around everywhere. Um, I actually remember when I was like 6. This is really funny. I guess I should have known. I actually wanted like stage Teen Titan plays in like our apartment's basement, but no, none of the other kids are like they're like you're weird, and I'm like yeah. And then I fell out of comics, and then um my aunt she dated this Vietnam vet who was on disability because he had like a bunch of bullets still
Oh
floating
wow.
in him.
mm-hmm.
So basically, all he did was like drink all day and read comics.
Huh.
So, not really a guy I really wanted to hang around with, but he kept showing me comics. And like for me, it was what was that Thor 300, that Ragnarok thing where like
Mm-hmm.
everybody like dies or like they just blow everything up, and then it was Phoenix Must Die.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like those were the two that like that's when I was like, because like there was like in between like being a little kid and all that stuff, my allowance was only like 25 cents or whatever. So like I went to baseball cards instead of
Did you get
comics.
did you get the
But like,
comic book cards as well? The comic book.
huh? No. I was
Uh,
just sports because I'm a
yeah, yeah,
Pittsburgher, so like we grew up
yeah.
playing
With
sports,
Pirates and all that stuff,
football,
right?
baseball, basketball. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like it. Like even nerds, like I always told people, like for the longest time, was like I didn't even know women didn't like football until I left
Dang.
Pittsburgh. Like it was just like yeah, it's a religion there. So it was just, but yeah, that was when comics really got to me, and like when I was around 9, I started drawing, and then like that's sort of like yeah, then it was like game over. That was when I started really
Okay,
liking
okay.
comics.
Since you did the plays, and your friends thought she was weird, and John
They
and
still do.
John, had read all the comic books. So when did y'all find out y'all was nerds?
I mean, it's funny because I don't know. I don't know how to even put it. I knew that I was definitely like an odd bird. I think I even like did
Oh my
cosplay
god.
early. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because what happened was I was really into Doctor Who. That's my favorite sci-fi thing is Doctor Who, and I was Tom Baker's Doctor Who, and all my friends liked it. But I actually came dressed as Doctor Who to class one day. Went to school one day because I used to have like a mop of curly hair like Tom Baker. I actually had hair one time at one particular point, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I even like thought about myself as a nerd. I just felt like I was really into science and astronomy and symbol, just symbol systems and storytelling. It was just like I was fascinated by the world, and I think it's because I grew up in a space where I could actually let my imagination like run wild. Shh. Hey,
Yeah.
sorry.
For me, it was just kind of I don't know. It was weird because like um, I was always treated like the smart kid. But I played sports, right? So, you know, yeah, I mean, and it's just like when I was a little kid, like just enough to like where people were like, okay, like he likes hitting people. Um, so like it was sort of like this other weird kind of space because I think because I played sports, like my family just like encouraged like the reading and the art stuff because like I already filled that like that I checked that off, or like because I integrated to school, like the fact that I fought, like just kind of let every like so you're not really like when you check those boxes, like oh, this is a kid who played football. Here's a kid who played baseball. Here's a kid who like will
Yeah.
swing on you. Like they don't really treat. They just treat you as like they'll treat you like the smart kid, but they don't really treat you like. They don't call you egghead, right? Like they don't do all that other stuff. But so I never. I mean, definitely knew you were different. Definitely knew that you were doing things that other people weren't. But because I did those other things, so like I floated between groups. Like I didn't really hang out with the jocks, but I hung out with the academic kids. I hung out with the heavy metal kids, like and then I hung out like there was only like 12 black people in the school.
Okay.
So,
He was pretty popular in a way.
so like we listened to music together. Like it was just like so yeah, it was like a different kind of
Yeah.
nerd, right? Because it was like once you did that, like you didn't even have to like I like, didn't fight in high school because I fought in Catholic school.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's all I got. I think go to my next segment. It's the meat of the show. So everybody know what y'all got going on. It's called the hotkeys. Being the music, all about hotkeys, what DJs play to turn up the party or the club. As well in comics, it's key issues, a new character, new storyline, or a book get picked up in movies or TV show nowadays. So we're finna say some key topics that y'all do so people can go home with something. So with that being said, how long have y'all been in comics?
I mean, I think the first time I made like a play at making a comic that was picked up by another publisher was probably about 20 years ago. I've been in independent comics for a while actually, and then me and my friend Damien did this comic book called The Whole Consumer Culture. And mind you, I was doing independent stuff before then, the smaller pieces or whatever, but I kind of count that as a jumping off point because it was a publisher who actually gave us money to do something. You know what I'm saying? It was like, here's some money to publish a book. That was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of wild. I mean, because before that, both of us were doing like our independent stuff, and I have been making comics for a while, but that was the first time I was like, I finished this book and I got it out into the world. So about 20 years, give or take. Yeah.
In all honesty, I started with Rosarium. I'm basically a science fiction writer, satirist. So my first novel that I wrote, Sunshine Patriots, that's a science fiction novel, and then satire. What was that? And then the third novel, Coontown Killing Caper. I mean, that's a satire. But so basically, when I started Rosarium, John and I had already met. So we met when I was running around with Coontown, which was like 2012. And then I contemplated starting Rosarium. So Rosarium Publishing, we do comics and science fiction, focus mainly on brown folks. We publish people from all around the world. But so basically, I started that because 2 of my 3 novels, even though I was self-publishing, entered academia. So one person was writing part of his PhD dissertation on my first book, and then the third book, Coontown, that was being taught in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 universities the first year it came out. Like nobody knew who it was. So I was like, if I'm good enough for academia but not good enough for publishing, then publishing must be the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, because it's like, well, everybody likes to think they're special. I'm like, you're not that special. It has to happen to other people. And one of the people that I thought about was John, because I was just like, because at that time, you had the Black Comics thing, but,
Right.
and then you had the whole from, but, you weren't doing anything. I was just like, well, this guy's incredibly talented and
Right.
I mean, I think I told you that once or twice before in the last, 12 years or whatever, however long we've known each other.
That sounds familiar.
13 years.
Yeah, yes, it's been 13 years. Has it been that long?
Dang.
Almost, yeah. OnyxCon 2012, yeah.
Wow.
So almost.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time. Especially how much we talk to each other. But anyway.
Yeah.
So I was meeting like folks like John and some other folks. So I was just like, nah, these are people who are brilliant not being published mainly for like the same reasons that I wasn't, right?
Yep.
So then that's kind of how Rosarium started, and it started with Mothership, and then it kind of went on from there. Mothership Tales from Afrofuturism and Beyond, which was our first anthology, and then it went on from there. So then that's how I started like publishing science, speculative fiction on one side and comics on the other. It just kind of started like that. And it was mainly because I was just meeting so many talented people who I was just like, in this industry, a lot of times all you need
Yeah.
is validation. Like you don't even need to like sell. Like you don't even need to sell well. It's just like, oh, here was this company that decided to invest in this person. We'll look at them then. Like we all, or like that was the excuse we needed because nobody wants to be first, but a lot of people
Okay,
want to be
okay.
second.
Right.
Yeah.
So both of y'all almost got similar, backstories on that. But what triggered y'all to actually say, "Hey, I want to write a comic"?
For
I love the
me, it
word
was
trigger.
because I became a publisher and I don't have time to write
Okay.
novels. Literally, and like the first one we did was Bad Mothers, and that was literally because I spent so much time doing other stuff, putting out other people's stuff. Like it started messing with.
So I mean, but is it to me? I mean, I'm trying to write a novel myself, but isn't it the same like process though, writing a novel and comic, or is it extremely quicker?
I think it depends, but no, I mean,
For me, okay, it's gonna sound weird, but I'm a fairly layered writer. Like I just like a lot of things have like a lot of different meanings, right? So like there's a lot that goes into that
Okay.
kind of process. There's a lot of research, and there's like a lot of ways that you have to like contemplate how you're saying
Okay.
stuff, like and how things are moving. So like if you read like say like Coontown, like you think you're reading like a satire, right? And you're reading like vampire crack babies and murder and all this stuff, but a lot of it is like historically based, and a lot of it is like allusions to other things. So it's like really talking about something else, and that takes. And while I write them quickly, it took like 5-10 years to get to the point
Okay.
where you could write it. Where comics, the one that I did the day the Klan came to town, like that was based on a historical event, so that was a lot of research. But even still, that was nowhere near how much time I took to
Okay.
write a novel.
And we speaking comics. Are we speaking novels or like 28-page floppies?
Oh,
Okay.
I've only written
Okay.
graphic novels. Yeah.
only
I mean,
graphic novels.
yeah. Like Clan was a graphic novel. Refuge was a graphic novel, and then I guess technically Bad Mothers is a trade paperback because that was like 6 issues
Okay.
put together.
Yeah, but still like a graphic. I mean, that's still a long
Okay.
form. Yeah.
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 Yeah, for me, I write. I mean, I would say like the first time I really tried to, um, well, a lot of people don't realize this, but the first version of the whole was actually like the main character. The whole was a white character, actually. Yeah, and you know, when I met Damien, we kind of like race bent him because we started to realize like how underrepresented Black people are in comics, and we just became like really interested in like how African diasporic languages and religions are just pushed down or like disrupted or demonized. So that's what the book was about. So that's what that particular story was about. But I want to say like the first time I wrote a graphic novel, I wanted to just see if I could do it. Yeah, I really did. Like actually, it's called Pitch, and it was it's called Pitch Shadows and Fact is the name of it. And I was working. It's 250-page graphic novel. Actually, I wrote the whole script, and I don't know. It was a great experience because I realized that I really could do that. I could actually do the writing. You know what I'm saying? And even though I never like published it, really, I mean, I kind of published like some of it. I realized it also had flaws, and I started actually drawing the book before I actually kind of edited it. I know that sounds weird, but I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm like, I like it. I gave it to a friend of mine, Nedia Corafor, actually, and she's like, I like this, but your character's too passive, And I was like, he is not. Oh shoot, he is. God. So he was like, yeah, it's kind of like that. So, and I think the first time I really like felt super comfortable writing something that was a long form piece that I really thought that it became the thing it was Blue Hand Mojo, which is the book that of mine that Bill published actually, and that was a little bit longer. But I did like a lot of short pieces and stuff. But for that character, Frank Johnson, I was really interested in like the Great Migration from Mississippi to Chicago, and so I kind of used him as an avatar to kind of like explore the transmission of Black culture, from the South to the North, that kind of thing. And he just represents that as a kind of a motif or like a symbol, and that world is really big too. Like I'm real. Me and my friend David are finishing up. Like we're working on the second book now, but there's many stories in that world. Now, as far as like the whole novel piece, I mean, I have never written a novel personally. I've written a bunch of short stories though. I like the short story format because I can, you can get into a world, get out of it pretty quickly. And I also like the idea of illustrated fiction. So, Bill's probably tired of me talking about this. Actually, the project
Yeah, I
we're working
seen
on
it.
right now.
I seen it.
The first time we actually have like, some illustrated fiction, which I'm kind of being drawn to, just because for me, making graphic novels is arduous, because I'm an artist, a lot of times. So, like we just finished a 288 page graphic novel of, of another project. And it was crazy. It's a lot of it's physically taxing, and, if you have a lot of stories in your head, like I do, then, doing like illustrated fiction or illustrated short stories is just more effective than really, really trying to draw a comic for every idea that you have, so that's why I'm with that.
Ironically, I went to school for marketing, so just trying to figure out how to push my comic on social media more. I thought about having like cut it down to the panel and post it and like make something up by the panel. But currently I did my first illustrated fiction. Now you gave me what it's called. The art council here in town, I guess it's called Art Society. They now they want to mess with comic book writers, so they had us. They got an artist and they painted a picture. Then we are supposed to write a story based on the picture or one page. So I did that. So I'm currently it's on display right now on top of the courthouse here, and it's auctioned off too. But that's the first time I did it, and everybody knows me for being a DJ or music, and a comic book writer. But when they read that piece, they're like, "Oh my god, it's so good!" I was like, I don't know what happened. I just got inspired by the actual artwork and wrote a piece, and I thought it was pretty dope. So, but now you gave me people actually do it. I thought it was just something they made us do, but hear you talking about it and seeing this comic y'all putting out, I see it is a thing that people actually do. So I'm gonna dive into it more now.
No, it's the base. I mean, to me, in a lot of ways, it's like it's part of the building blocks of pulp fiction. You know what I'm saying? Like, the comics come from the pulps, and so you would have these pulp magazines, science fiction, adventure, and stuff, where the same process that you did, that's how they would make them a lot of times. They actually had a concept. They do like a concept art piece, and they'd be like, "Hey, here's a spaceship on fire that's falling through, and it's about to hit an angel, whatever, right?" and they give it to a writer, and they would create like a short story that they would publish in these, magazines. But that was the process, actually.
Okay.
So.
I might have missed something, but both of y'all had books or some kind of written work at colleges, correct?
Yes.
You had your Coontown book going through the colleges being taught, right?
Yeah, I mean, no.
Well, I got more. It's a leading question. So, yeah, I think y'all the first guest that actually had that done on my show. So, how was that? Like, to me, that sounds great. But, Bill, you said it was cool, but being published was better. So, in my eyes, having a book being taught in classes is pretty good. So, what's the benefits of that?
No. I mean, I don't know how to put this without sounding like a
you can.
A lot of the things that I write end up getting taught in universities, like because I write in layers. Like,
do you have to present it to a professor, or how does it go?
Like the first one's Sunshine Patriots. Like literally, it was a friend of mine who taught at Georgia Tech who read it. Just she didn't even mess with science fiction at the time. She does now. Kavita Phillip, and she's just like, hey, there's like this young professor at Georgia Tech who was really into science fiction, and I gave her your the draft of um, Sunshine Patriots, Lisa Yazek,
Yeah.
and Lisa was like it kind of opened her eyes to like this whole other world of science fiction that book did. So she became like a huge advocate, and that just kind of like went on like a really huge advocate. So that kind of just permeated where a handful of professors just kind of look at like what Rosarium does all the time. And it just kind of filters out through that. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Um, One, because if they have you speak at a university,
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
and then you have to put you up like in a fancy hotel, and they have to feed you like the whole
Yeah,
time
yeah.
you're there and shepherd
Yep.
you around. Yeah, when people are like, "Hey, don't you want to lecture at college?" I'm like, no, I want to get paid. Like, I want to,
Yeah.
I want to work there. I want to be able to speak.
Hey,
That's
hey,
great.
buddy.
I get to like hang out, like But I think other than that, like of course it's like insanely flattering, right? Like it's like humbling, right? That there are like these gazillion books out there, and like for me, like Coontown was being taught alongside like Toni Morrison, Tim
Yeah, see, that's the
O'Brien,
thing.
Chinua Achebe, Richard Wright, like James Baldwin, and you're like that's crazy. But then the third thing is just like it's kind of like a sign that my work might
Okay.
survive me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that's the humbling thing, and that's kind of like the profound thing is just like if academics are teaching what you're doing, like other academics generations on. So like my first book, Sunshine Patriots, like I wrote that in 1998, and last semester they were teaching it at a university in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So this thing that I wrote like 27 years ago is like still on occasion, not very often, like still being taught. So like that's sort of like, oh wow, my work like might actually survive me. Like well, after I'm gone, like even though not a lot of people know my name now, but like in the future, be like, yo, Bill Campbell wrote this or Bill Campbell published that, and you're just like, that's yeah, you can't really
Okay.
grasp it.
It does.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. The first book of mine that was taught in a university was The Whole, the book that me and Damien did, and it was at University of Buffalo, and the professor, there was like Bill said, we it has a lot of layers, and it's a very dense book. So she dedicated 2 weeks of her class to just talking about the different instances. It was African American literature class, which is kind of wild, So like Bill was saying, is being juxtaposed with these really like massively successful artists and writers is very humbling. The other thing is like, I'm in the academy, so I'm a professor myself. So I actually use a lot of people's work myself, and I, travel about and, been working in what they call Afrofuturism or Black speculative, Black speculative literature, and there's been an uptick in a lot of people using comics and using, Black sci-fi and stuff in their classes, and you'll see that in like, comparative literature classes a lot of times too, or classes that have a particular topic that that certain comics cover and what have you. So the book that's probably been taught the most of ours is our adaptation of Kindred by Octavia
Okay.
Butler, and it's not our original story, but we actually like adapted it into another form. So that's been really interesting. And some of the books I've published actually are being used in classes as well. So that's exciting. And and professors will get their hands on it all kinds of ways. Either like a lot of them are fans of the medium, or they get referred by other people. That kind
Well,
of
that
stuff.
was
So,
that was that was my next
and
question. Is this happening because professors are fans, or is it better because it's resonating with the students more? But I see your answer to the question.
I think it's a
Okay.
little bit of both, actually. professors always want to try to get you and get the students engaged. You know what I'm saying? And so, you can teach particular concepts from almost any space. You just have to situate it contextually within the curriculum that you're creating. I just saw this post today I loved, and this lady said that she's going to stop saying that fiction is fake. She said basically like nonfiction is learning through information and fiction is learning through imagination. I just love that idea. So yeah, and so you can actually create a narrative in a particular class, and you can actually situate it that you can pick up different titles within a rubric or within a schema of thinking. That's really exciting. So some people are big fans. And you have a lot of people who are fans of a particular work, and that's why they do it. But also, a professor say, "Hey, man, I need to teach this book because it's dealing with those particular subject matters." Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember one class taught Sunshine Patriots because it was a cyborg class.
Yep.
And like when the one book, The Day the Klan Came to Town, the graphic novel, like that was taught alongside Mouse. So I'm sure it was like, which was crazy. But like it had to have been some sort of like racism and resistance kind of class, So it's just sort of, yeah, like, well, I mean, John knows better than I do, but yeah, it's like this whole big cocktail of like what exactly, just like anything else, it's like what are people looking for at that particular time?
Yeah,
fits into that, does that, and I've been lucky that some of my books, like because they are layered, like can fit into different modes. Like like Coontown's been taught as like satire, Afro-punk, contemporary American lit, African diaspora, like the African diaspora. It's like it's been taught like all kinds of different things because people can pull different things out when you're talking about more than one thing. When you're talking
Okay, that's dope. So, since y'all both history buffs and like mythology and stuff like that, 13 years ago y'all met, and now y'all putting out a project called Lion Man. So, what exactly is that, and how did that come about?
Well, this is God. What is this, like our fourth or fifth project together? I don't even know.
Something like that. We've done quite a bit of books together.
Yeah. So like,
we will be doing more books.
What was that?
I'm saying we will be doing more books.
Yeah, I think we're married.
What'd you say?
Sometimes.
Y'all did sign it with a pen, so I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we actually get contractually like obligated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see, because John brought this to me, so John can tell you like how Lion Man actions are, and actually he can tell you better about the history of Lion Man.
Then I also got it, so y'all want me to pull up anything I can pull up to.
Okay, that's cool. So I am really fascinated with what they call public domain characters.
So what is that? Break that down, people.
Yeah, so basically, the public domain essentially is a body of work that has, either fallen out of copyright or it basically has either created to be in the public domain. So that means that everybody has access to these characters and you can use them, or these stories, you can use them for you can actually like republish them. You can do all kinds of stuff with them. And because of copyright laws from back in the day, you would have to renew copyrights all the time. For instance, there's a character called the Green Spider, for instance, which was created in the 1960s, but because Charlton Comics didn't put the proper identification for the copyright on those books, that book actually is instantly in the public domain. So that means that anybody could actually do a Green Spider comic, that kind of thing. So so what happens is, like, after Superman blows up, everybody's trying to make a Superman. Everybody's trying to make comics about superheroes, like left and right. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of superhero characters, right? We're talking about 400, 500, 600 characters that people are just ravenous. But they're so connected to the Second World War to a certain degree because they would actually like send these comics as part of care packages to the GIs that were like, storming the beaches of Normandy and all this kind of thing over in the Second World War. That now, once they came back, people didn't want to read superhero comics as much. And that's where you see like horror comics and like comics about celebrities, and Western comics actually kind of or even romance comics actually like kind of escalate what is superheroes, along with the censorship deal that happened. I won't go into. Totally disrupts the superhero. So a lot of times they would let these superheroes like lapse into the public domain. They just wouldn't. They wouldn't actually like renew the copyrights on them. So you literally have a sea of of well, that's not literal, more metaphorical. But you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, but yeah, but there's a bunch of characters out there that are that anybody can use, and so Lion Man was a character that was created by this company called All Negro Comics, and this gentleman who was a kind of the spearhead of it was this gentleman named Orrin C. Evans, who was a black journalist actually, and this was in Pittsburgh too, right, Bill?
Yeah. Like he was in Philly, but for
Yeah,
some reason, he printed and published it in Pittsburgh.
in
And again,
Pittsburgh.
Black Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like the Pittsburgh Courier, for instance, is a very important paper around black comics as well.
Yeah, I
But
mean, Black Pittsburgh is incredibly important to American culture. But
well, yeah, it is. It is. There's no lie.
I'll
There's
let
no
y'all
lie.
speak.
No lie. So anyway, so what ends up happening is, they put together the first black comic book collection, from multiple genres, and this is 1947 actually, and it was all kinds of stuff in there. You had a detective character called Ace Harlem. You had these things called the Doodillies, which were kind of like silly, like fantasy story, almost like these little fantasy creatures. You had a couple of illustrated fiction stories, all kinds of stuff. And they had this character that was kind of like an old school, like jungle action kind of superhero character called Lion Man. It was only like about 7 or 8 pages, something like that, maybe 10 pages. And what happens is like the book is pretty successful. It voted another issue, but what happened was, from what we understand, is that once the quote unquote mainstream got got wind of what they were trying to do, they wouldn't sell them paper and stuff, right? And so they never got a chance to do the second book, because of a combination of racism and also just like capitalism, or like just them not wanting to be on their turf, so to speak. Yes, this is the original one here. Yeah, so I would actually like make different versions of this character, because I would be working on like a project or something, and I would go through the public domain, and I would actually kind of like pretend that the character never.
So
stopped being
this
published.
is before this project, right?
It's the original. Yeah. This is
No,
1947
you.
version. Yeah. Oh, this is before. Yeah, this is before the project. Yeah, and I would just do this because I was interested in it was kind of like relaxing to me to do these designs. I know it's very nerdy, but then again, I'm a big nerd. So I would just kind of like say, oh, what if Lion Man existed in the 50s? What if he existed in the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and beyond? And I would create versions of those characters, pretending that the character never got canceled. You see what I'm saying? And so, yeah, so it was kind of like me messing around with that. And then kind of like once Bill started seeing what we were doing, he was like, I think he became interested in the
project. Now, how did you discover this?
And,
like, how you know, John, how did you discover All New Comics?
Because I'm a comic scholar, so I study black. I literally teach, like, I'm getting ready to teach a black superhero class right now. So it's like, so this is part of what I do, as my job is actually to study,
So you found it as an adult?
So that's how. Yeah, definitely as an adult a few years ago, actually. Maybe like around 8 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. And I've been kind of drawing various versions of the character for a long time. But yeah, but that's what it came from. And it was interesting though, is like, because there's so much disruption in Black history, we're still discovering Black characters that even predate, Lion Man. There was a character that was just discovered like a couple of years ago named Sergeant Joe that actually predates all of the other Black characters that we knew about, as far as like superheroes go. The other thing you have to take into account is format. Like for instance, Sergeant Joe is a comic strip character. I guess it depends, but he definitely was a superhero that actually predates even Lion Man and his other characters. But so part of the thing is like, really being interested in Black history and Black representation in this medium, but also kind of protecting that history and actually saying like, hey, because these characters are in the public domain, we can actually like salvage them. We can actually like update them, and then keeping the same spirit of the original, we can represent them to the future, so to speak. It's a very Afrofuturist thing. Go back and get it, Sankofa. Go back to the past bring it to the future for future generations.
I kind of like call it like reimagining and remixing like the whole thing, because it's sort of like, I mean, Lion Man himself, like, I mean, what was he? He was like an athlete, a scientist, but like
Yeah,
he was still like in a grass skirt.
Yeah, I just seen
So
I
you're
seen
like,
the
yeah,
panel. See, like he was working with
so you're
the
like,
radio equipment. I was like, how he know what this is?
yeah, you know. So you're sitting there going like, okay, that's 1947. Like, obviously, no Negro is going to be walking around in a grass skirt, working working for the UN. Like, it's
He's on a deep cover.
yeah,
well, yeah,
yeah,
and see, and actually, that's funny that you said that because, like, what Bill is saying is like, yeah, he's this really weird like stereotype, even though it's created by like black people. Even the fact that he's called Lion Man and not Leopard Man, for instance, because there's really no lions there where he's that part of Africa, because it's not like Wakanda where it's like a mystical, country that doesn't exist. They basically say that Lion Man is on the Gold Coast, right? So that's like West Africa. That's like Ghana, up in that area. So
yeah.
there's a rich history that you're actually drawing from, right? And so they didn't really do like a lot of research on like the traditions or anything like that. In fact, in the original story, it's just him and his sidekick. There's no people there. It's really kind of wild, and but there's no lions actually either. So we had to actually come up with ways to connect him to lions in a particular way. Some people have been like, "Oh, this is where they got the idea of Black Panther from," and we're like, no, probably not." They're probably more influenced by Tarzan and like the Phantom, which is a character by Lee Falk that came out in 1930s, like 1935 or so. Because people don't realize that this jungle action stories, that's like that was a really popular genre back in the day.
For
Seriously.
for me not
And
being
so
a Black
yeah.
Panther scholar, but Black Panther wasn't even in the jungle like that in the early. Like I think he was there at one time at Fantastic Four, but after that, wasn't in New York.
Well, I mean,
Well, I
yes
mean,
and
the
no.
Kirby
he
movies
was
is set in Wakanda though.
yeah, it was in
Oh, okay,
Wakanda for a
okay.
long time actually, but he did have a yeah, no, so he doesn't become part of the Avengers until like
Oh,
the
okay,
late
okay, okay.
70s, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I
But
actually
his,
used
his
to own those the Kirby run of Black Panther.
what'd you say?
I used to own that,
Oh
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
original.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And actually
but
too, it's like
I mean,
Kirby.
a lot of folks like fell into like, even though that they were moving things forward, were falling into different stereotypes, and I'm sure like 80 years from now they'll laugh at us for certain things too. So, I mean, like you read like, like these radical negritude poets and they're like, yes, we are savages. And you're like, yo, homie, like, like you're like at the Sorbonne talking about how you're a savage. Like, okay, I mean, do
That's
whatever,
funny.
you do you. So, but I mean, for us, I mean, for me, like when because John and David Brame did a single issue of Lion Man first with Michael Dando at St. Cloud State University. So then that's how he was just like, hey, we did this Lion Man thing. But then he had to tell me who Lion Man was, of course, because I didn't know, and I'm a history nerd, but can't know everything. So it was at first I was just like, oh, okay, but then I started thinking as a history nerd and as like a writer and stuff, I was just like, well, the utter possibilities of what this is, right? Because if like you go back to like all these different public domain characters, obviously, I mean, they're racist, sexist, homophobic as all get out,
All
right?
the
Like they're
things.
not kind to us. Like, and it's like all those jungle adventures, those were like white kings and queens of the jungle, like,
Right.
so you're sitting there going like, okay, so one of the things like for me, the cool thing about the Lion Man thing is like we get to snatch the rightful ownership of who came up with the first black superheroes, right? Because everybody's like, oh, it's Jack Kirby, it's Black Panther, it's like all these different things, just even in a larger cultural context, like things that we invent ultimately get appropriated, and then they claim that they invented, right? Like Elvis invented
Yeah.
rock and roll, right? You're like, rock and roll was around like 15 years before Elvis came along, right? Like,
Right.
like jump blues is a thing, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, Louis Jordan has a much better claim on that than he does. But Sidebar. Sorry. So like for me, it was just sort of like, so we get to actually say like, hey, here's this compendium of Lion Man. This is the original Lion Man. The Black superhero genre is started by Black people, right? Like you get to say that and you get to like push that forward. Like we get to change like different narratives, you know, or we get to help influence it, you know. Sort of like when we did Mothership Tales from Afrofuturism and Beyond, people didn't know what Afrofuturism was. So like we got to help, you know, do our little part in like pushing that whole thing forward, right? And that's sort of like what we're doing here is a sort of like, here's yet another area where Black people pioneered a thing for themselves that got totally appropriated by other people. So like, let's look into other areas where that happens, right? Or where that happened. Like people don't know, like the reason that we have ambulance services is literally because of, yet again, Black Pittsburgh. Like Black people in the Hill District of Pittsburgh said like, yeah, we can't have cops just throwing us in the middle of a paddy wagon and if we get to the hospital or not, right? But that's like how EMT started, right? So it's just sort of like, so that's the kind of thing that like that excites me is like not only do we get to remix and reimagine these characters, but we get to reclaim our own legacy, right? So you know, because you know the Lion Man campaign, you know, we have 3 original stories by John, 3 by you,
2, I think 2.
2
by me.
No, it is 3 because you have the little scientist thing too.
The little scientist thing.
Yeah, the lion was. Oh, maybe it is 2. Okay, anyway, sorry, I apologize. So we have 2 from him, and then like we did. I did one with Yvette Lisa Indolovu because Lion Man's set in Africa, and I'm like, I'm not African. I've never been there. So she's a young Zimbabwean writer that science fiction writer that I love to death. She was one of my students at Clarion West, and then Damien reimagined Phantoma. Who is like one of the craziest superheroes ever. Like
who was also originally a jungle character too, by the way.
Yeah, see. And then we have like a bunch of artists doing this whole public domains thing, which is like a pinup gallery where they get to reimagine all these different things, right? And one of the things that excited me, and then I'll let John take over. But because I was thinking about this, because you know, after this backer kit and after you know we released The Adventures of Lion Man, like we hope to do more of them. And one of the things that I discovered was like, so I came up with this character named Mrs. Polonium because I discovered that Black scientists and mathematicians worked on the Manhattan Project. So like, while that's dubious and obviously not really a fan of nuclear weapons, like that's yet another thing where like, you know, Black folks were integral to this thing that happened in American history, right? Like the Manhattan Project, but we're totally erased from it. So here's like this Black woman who had like multiple postgraduate degrees, which is why she's Mrs. Because when you get your master's and you're a Mrs. I didn't know that at all. And she worked on the polonium segment of trying to figure out the bomb. So I'm like, oh wow, that's great. So like, you know, we get to do this other story where you sit there and go like, hey, look, this is based on an actual Black woman that, like, yet again, another hidden figure. Like, and we can do all kinds of stuff like that. We can imagine all things in the future. We can, you know, mess around with the past. We can like highlight things like her, right? And just kind of keep going on. Like the possibilities are endless when we're just kind of messing around with the past, right? I mean, you know, we all went through the American public education system. They've been messing with the past even like while it was So why don't we like reclaim all the different things that we have done for ourselves and for this country and for the world?
Yeah.
Very well said.
So what keeps like Marvel or DC just snatching their public domain up and just making their own, not their own character, but making it a story based on the character themselves?
Well, you know, they actually did just do a Blue Bolt character, which I think is a public domain character. I don't know. I mean, I guess they have so many. I mean, they have 70,000 characters total to deal with. Yeah, I mean, so they have a very robust catalog. You know, it's funny you mentioned that because DC was actually pretty notorious for like buying up comic book characters from competitors. You know, that's how they got Shazam and like Blue
and
Beetle
Flash.
The Peacemaker. Well, Flash was always DC.
Okay.
I thought, right? Plastic Man
It's
though.
not Fawcett. Wasn't all that?
I
Aren't all
thought
those?
was he Fawcett? I didn't think
Weren't
he
they
was, but no,
all like that?
Plastic Man's
I don't
Fawcett.
remember. Like literally, I don't remember.
But but so some of those characters they would fall, like for instance the Freedom Fighters characters, though this Uncle Sam, the Ray, Doll Man, those characters actually did fall into the public domain. They also did use the Thunder Agents, which was kind of contentious. Wally Wood's Thunder Agents were kind of sort of in the public domain, so stuff like that. So some people have used them. There are companies that have built entire like catalogs from them. Pacific Comics back in the 80s actually used a lot of female public domain characters. They created this thing called FemForce back in the day. Alex Ross, the famous illustrator, he actually created this thing called Project Superpowers with Dynamite, where he used a lot of the public domain characters. Image Comics did this one thing called, I think it's called The Second Story or something like that, where they actually literally would take like the first story and they would pretend and they would write the next story after,
okay.
that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool, actually. So, some people have. I think that Marvel's catalog is already so dense that I don't know if they even have time to even do something like that. And the other thing too that I remember with Marvel and DC is that they're not comic book publishers anymore. They're just they're intellectual property farms. So their main business is not making comics. Their main business is licensing characters. Yeah. So that's to say they make way more money with the video games and films than they ever would with comics. So that's the thing. So if they make comics now to keep the copyrights alive to a certain degree, just so they can, or trademarks, and they can do some R&D stuff with them. But for the most part, that's a secondary or even tertiary market for them.
Yeah, that explains a lot though, because it's really confusing to me. Comic book writers, artists, they don't really promote their work. I don't know, like you think like actors or other people, they go, oh yeah, I got this coming out. But it seems like the comic people don't do it. But you was explaining that to me or to the audience or whatever. Now it makes more.
They literally have no marketing budget. I actually created a brand new black superhero for Marvel called Ghostlight, actually. And when I asked them about like promotional stuff, they literally said that we don't have a budget for it because they don't have to have one. And the other thing too is that, I essentially created like a potential like multi-million-dollar, depending upon what they do with the character, because when you work for them, it's work for hire. One of the things I love about working with Bill is that, we either split ownership of characters or, we own the characters outright and we try to make things from them. But really, you have like a lot.
They don't split it with me. They split it with each other. Just so you know.
So would it be beneficial to you? Like say, okay, they don't have marketing budget, but hey, I think this character could blow up. Like you put a little bit of money behind it. Would it benefit you at all, or not really? Okay.
No, not really. No, because we don't with Marvel. You might get a tiny royalty. I mean, I got a royalty off of the first run of Ghostlight, but I think it's because it was just new.
But they promoted it, even though you would have got 12 more issues probably, right?
Well, they promoted so for them, like the single issues actually are where they make the most of their money. Because they do like the variant colors and all this kind of stuff. And if you're doing something like, I literally took a character and resurrected them and turned him into a superhero. So there's also the money that they get for like selling the back issue of his first appearance, stuff like that. What's interesting about working on something like Lion Man is that, this character belongs to kind of sort of everybody. It's the public domain. So, in fact, there's a collection of black editors that won an Eisner Award for totally purpose, like republishing and kind of like doing like a director's cut version of or like a remaster, so to speak, of all Negro comics. They published the whole thing in one.
Was that was a Kickstarter or something a couple years ago? Yeah.
Yep, it was. Yeah, and they won an Eisner Award for it because they cleaned up all the files and they wrote a couple stories and they republished it.
Because it might be over now. I don't know, but everybody's so excited by black superhero comics or black comics in general. So, is it demand or hunger for y'all project? Is it easy? You see, like when y'all start promoting it, people like jumping towards it, or what's going on with it? Because I mean, I seen that, I was like, oh my god, it's Lion Man.
I mean, okay, so for me as the publisher, right? My main goal isn't really to make money, because I always tell people if I wanted to make money, I'd be publishing porn, right? Like that's just real. So like when you're looking at like Rosarium, it's sort of like we're trying to like kind of like shift the focus of culture, right?
Right.
So that's sort of like that is more along the lines of like, so I don't actually like, I generally don't care what's popular and what's not, or if there's a demand or what's not, because what you're basically trying to do is just change the focus and kind of change the idea of like what culture is, or like as this, like we have like this huge corporate culture and they're like make money, make money, make money, but culture is like the intrinsic thing that keeps us alive.
Yeah, truly.
Right. So like for me, Lion Man is like a project that resurrects a part of the culture and moves it forward as well, as John said, like the whole Sankofa thing. So like
yeah, go ahead.
Swear? Yeah, I don't give a.
Yeah, you can say it three. You can say it 3 times, and you gotta turn a rated R movie. No, you good. You good. It's a click of a button. I switch split or not.
yeah. No, so like I don't really care. So like I always tell people, right? It's sort of like I don't think of the word diversity, but if it helps you think of like us, it's like we're like an anti-diversity publisher. Diversity says that we're people of color when we're 93% of humanity. We are the norm.
Right.
Right? Like the vast majority of people are some version of brown.
Right.
Right. So then you are basically a black man publishing brown folks from all around the world. It shows you like you can focus in a different way. You don't have to think about like the money or like what white people think, because they're irrelevant. Right. What you're doing is you are changing the focus so that people think more along the lines of like, I am expressing myself. I am celebrating myself. I am celebrating the culture from which I was born. Right. And what's money? Like money's fake, but your culture, oddly enough, is real.
Yeah.
You can die poor, but you can die proud and be black or be whatever you are. The money, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can't take with you, but what you took with you throughout your life was a certain pride that culture helped instill in you.
Right.
So that's sort of like when I look at something like Lion Man, or why John and I get along so well, it's because like we're like kind of like we're basically on the same train when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's about like leaving something that's meaningful and actually like, teaching people about these wonderful characters that our ancestors created, or the people who are connected to us from the past created. Pretty awesome.
Now, what makes Lion Man a superhero though?
Well, that's funny because some people don't think he is. Some people think because he's he doesn't have necessarily like a traditional costume that he isn't a superhero. Some people think of that, which is weird. I was having this conversation a couple of times with folk. So he has a mission, altruistic mission. He's sent there by the United Nations to protect the resources of that area, right? He has a code name, Lion Man, which is a symbolic name. In fact, we don't even know what his real name is. We had to give him a name, actually. The other thing is he has a certain set of skills. He actually is an extremely talented scientist and technologist, and obviously some type of gifted fighter, right? And he also has a supervillain, Brute Sangro, that he fights against, and he has a sidekick. So he has some of the tropes, that a superhero would have.
I mean, the villain even has one henchman.
And the villain, and he has a henchman, exactly. Yeah.
So what's the difference between him and James Bond?
I think James Bond, because of certain tropes and things of a particular genre, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't have like what's James Bond's symbol? He doesn't have like a bat symbol or something that actually like, he's 007.
Yeah.
That's his code name. And he doesn't have like a costume. He doesn't have the trappings of a superhero, Like for instance, if you ask somebody out there, he's like, oh no, he's not a superhero. He's an adventure character, right? But then you have like people like Batman who doesn't have superpowers, but he has like, he's extremely gifted. He has the other thing too, and I was talking to our friend Damien about this. Is like when you think about the cultural acceptance of particular characters, for instance, like why isn't Zorro a character? I was, a superhero, for instance, because he has like, alternative identity. He's got like a secret layer. He's got a mask. He's got the symbol. He's got all the things. But I think some of it is because of the genre and the format. As far as it's still like he's like a proto superhero. That kind of thing. So it depends on like there's so many different like cultural touchstones on it and stuff. Like for instance, is Flash Gordon a superhero or because some people think he is because he's been juxtaposed with other superheroes. But then you also think of a character like Buck Rogers, where they say, "Oh, he's like a sci-fi character because he's not juxtaposed with the cultural norms of how
Yeah,
we look at
see, I struggle with that.
superheroes."
Where's the sci-fi with the superhero starts? Like when you bring out them characters, I
Yeah,
could look at Doctor Strange. Is he a
yeah.
superhero or is he sci-fi or a fantasy or whatever?
Well, he'd be fantasy, right? But he has a was not necessarily a secret identity, but he does have another identity. His title is he's the master of the mystic arts, but he's juxtaposed with other superheroes, and I think there's something about that, as far as like he's been in the Defenders, like he's actually been juxtaposed with actual superheroes,
So
right?
basically, if like Lion Man had continued, he would be a superhero because he would have been teamed up with.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
like what we're doing.
So
Like,
so
something that I'm kind of
okay, so let's say he didn't get teamed up with superheroes. He got teamed up with, I don't know, like the line's so blurred now. The Green Hornet or Dick Tracy, where he just fall in different.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because, like, to me, Dick Tracy definitely falls into like, he's a noir character. He's a crime character, right? But then the Green Hornet actually is kind of like a proto superhero because he's more like the Spider or the Shadow, where he actually does have a costume, or even a character like he's almost like coming out of the swashbuckler, kind of like the Scarlet Pimpernel or like like
Yeah.
Zorro. Well, the Scarlet Pimpernel, it's funny because the Scarlet Pimpernel is the first like masked villain, super, swashbuckler character. He was created in the early 1900s by a woman, actually, which is really interesting. But yeah, so we go back and forth with all this kind of stuff. Like, why is Iron Man a superhero and not just a sci-fi character? I really think what Damien was saying about the idea of like, what is the public discourse around those characters? Like, Batman is a superhero because we know what a superhero is now, right?
Right.
So it's that term, like, and me and Bill were talking about this with Afrofuturism or science fiction, right? Like, so for instance, you look at something like The Princess Steel, which is a proto science fiction story. It's called proto because because the current parlance or like people weren't calling it that yet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Even you look at like something like Light Ahead for the Negro or like White Man's Burden. These are old stories that technically have the tropes of science fiction, but because they're before the public discourse around it, they don't really. You can say speculative fiction, but it's not really science fiction yet because people haven't been calling it that yet.
It
Does
does.
that make sense? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like when you look at like the early novels, right? Because the novel didn't exist, so you look
That's
at
right.
like Don Quixote, Tristram Shandy. It's just sort of like these things, like because the novel wasn't like a thing yet.
It wasn't a popular format. So I
Right.
think format. Don't you think format has something to do with it?
Yeah.
Because
But also, I mean, it's sort of like the original concept album was when they actually went into the studio to make an album, right? Because before then, albums were just like compilations of all the different singles that you'd release.
that's right. That's right.
And then,
Yeah,
like
so-
later on, when that became normal, then the concept album, like they changed the definition.
Yeah,
to something
LPs and
else.
stuff like that.
Well, that you have like an overriding theme that you're trying to express within this album. But before that, it was like, wait, they're not jazz musicians and they're going in live to cut an album? Well, what a concept! I have no idea.
Like for
I
instance,
wasn't there for that conversation.
so like for instance, like why is Hawkeye a superhero and not Zorro? Because essentially they have masked characters with a certain set of skills, right? And I think what it is that by the time Hawkeye is created, the idea of the superhero is cemented in the public discourse, the public mind, the zeitgeist, so to speak,
Yeah.
So I think that because the first superhero technically was probably the Phantom, 1936, right? 1935, 1936. That predates Superman by like a couple of years, right? And then, but he's a comic strip character. So in comic books, of course, it's Superman, right? Is the first superhero, it's 1938. So by the time you get like, Lion Man's 1947, then technically, even the fact that he's called Lion Man, he's a superhero. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yeah, and because they know what that is now. One of my friends said that Popeye was the first superhero. I thought that was fascinating. I was like, huh.
That he like a transformation.
Like,
He eats suspense.
he needs to finish,
Right.
but that's
Yeah.
actually coming from the
Yeah.
cartoons more. But he doesn't necessarily have an altruistic, because altruism, I think, is part of the superhero thing too, like wanting to help better
Well, he's always
society.
having to save olive oil.
Yeah, exactly. He is very personal. That's why a character like Blade, to me, is just he's an anti-hero, because he has he's a personal vendetta. He wants to kill all the vampires because because he hates them. A Punisher. Punisher's like he's an acceptable serial killer essentially. He kills.
He's not always
He's just a killer.
Yeah.
He's like Dexter with a gun.
Y'all bring up anti-hero. A word that I like to use. Is anti-villain.
That's interesting.
One example is Negan from Walking Dead, because if the story followed Negan, he would be the hero of the story and Rick would be the villain.
I mean, that's true of like everything.
I mean, not just everything, but just one side story, because it's the same thing. Because he had his own community, and he really was trying to save the people.
I mean, yet again, if you read U.S. history, I mean, that's basically it.
It's who I went to war, right?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like I always think of like I think it's kind of interesting because like I always think of like Star Trek, right? And people are like, "Oh, I want to live in a Star Trek world," and I'm like, Star Trek is literally an expansionist military empire told from their perspective.
Yeah,
so think about it. Right. They're always going where they have no business. Oh, we just come in peace. Why are you attacking us? Just because we're like in your space and invading your planet? I mean, why are you attacking us? And then 20 years later, those enemies are part of the empire.
Part of the empire, exactly.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, the fight.
You're not cool at all if you really think about it. But because it's told from our perspective, from a military, because that's how we roll.
Right. But it's,
we're like, oh, this Star Trek is great. Starfleet is great. I'm like, nah, they go in, mess around with these places they have no business in.
Since y'all brought up Star Trek, what about the Star Wars thing? Seeing how the Jedi's was, kidnappers and stuff like that. How y'all feel about that?
I mean, both sides
messed up. Think anything about Star Wars, period.
I mean, they both messed up, man. That's why I love Doctor Who. Even that's kind of interesting, because Doctor Who is an apologist for. I think it's an apologist character for Britain being such a big colonizer, because the Doctor only fights colonizers. So right. I feel like the Doctor is like an anti-colonial character that is actually like apologizing for Britain being like one of the worst colonizers in history. So it's like,
I mean, they brought us here.
They brought us here, exactly. But you think about it, the Doctor only fights. He fights tyrants and colonizers. I mean, the Daleks are just Nazis they're cybernetic Nazis.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, going back to Lion Man.
I'm gonna run.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Sorry, but what's your? No, my wife is like, when you gonna be done?
Oh yeah, I'm not too much longer.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like as an example, like because Yvette is from Zimbabwe, and like I'm half Jamaican. Like we were like, yeah, he can't be part of, like in our story, he can't be part of the UN, like because like the UN ain't cool from like our perspective, right? So we put him in the Nkrumah Garvey Du Bois Institute. so he's like a spy for them, like as opposed to NATO, because or the UN, because
So that whole thing. I think I did away with that stuff too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the way that I look at it, like the two stories that I wrote are connected, and one is called The Lion Outside, where he basically is guarding a portal to this kind of dream space. So Leonopolis is this like mystical dream city. It's a utopia that's dreamed by like all these Black people. And the technology is being protected by this one of the other Lion Man. So one is inside the dreams, and one is outside the dreams. But a lot of it is about protecting the power of the Black radical imagination.
Since he is a poet, the main character, and one issue came out, how are y'all expanding the universe or the mythos with the vague knowledge of the character? Like what I mean, it's like a central pocket y'all try to keep it in, or y'all just say whatever, we just throw everything in the wall?
It's a starting. Yeah.
I mean, like for me, John and I have talked. Well, yeah, John and I talk all the time. But anyway, I mean, we both love it. It's very pleasant. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been speculating about is like because these characters are so old, or like Lion Man's only like 7-8 pages, whatever. It's like you just have like this huge open palette, right? So like for this story, you have the lion outside, then you have the tower, and then ours is like so he's doing like these like Afro surrealist and like kind of like Afrofuturistic things, but ours is like literally like a spy drama, right?
It's a spy story.
Yeah. So it's like this African country is facing rebellion and a plague, right? So like they have to like cure the plague and stop the. He teams up with a doctor to stop the plague and also stop the overthrow of the government, even though that government needs to be overthrown, right? So like you could put Lion Man in like all kinds of different things, and so like the one that with the Mrs. Polonium, like that would be a World War II Lion Man story.
Okay.
Right. So like basically, if we're messing with Lion Man in this, like, because I would love for this to be a series, like to bring back like the old serial, and like so Lion Man doesn't even have to be in like all the stories for like this Adventures of Lion Man series that we want.
That's how they used to do it back in the day.
Yeah. Right. So we can say like, hey, you X writer or you X artist, do you want to do a story on your favorite public domain character? And we'll put it in the Adventures of Lion Man too. Like, so it's just like the whole idea is just like this cultural like mishmash and remixing and just reinterpretation yet again to just kind of claim a new or different space out of old spaces.
Do y'all plan on going do more after this Becker kit with the characters?
Yeah, like I've already talked to a couple of people for doing a sort of like a one-off thing, and then like we'll start messing around asking, and I've asked other artists and authors if they want to do stuff, and
Yeah,
we
I
have
have
a
a
few
whole.
that do, and
Bill-
and I'm sure that we will have many
Now,
others because John knows that, like John literally knows like everybody on the planet, so
I don't know about that's.
I mean, there were
That's
probably like a
awful.
couple babies born like while we were doing this that you don't know,
Yeah.
but give them a minute. So yeah.
So that's the thing. So Bill has an entire superhero universe by accident, and so do I. You know what I'm saying? Because I basically have created it a mishmash of like original characters that I've created mixed with like reinterpreted, public domain characters. Some of them are analogs for existing characters. Like for instance, if I want to create a character and I want to write Cyborg, for instance, then I'll go and I'll find a character either I'll create a new character or I'll just create like a character that's similar, or find one that's similar in the public domain, and that way I can write a Cyborg story without having to worry about trademarks or something like that. Because these stories have like tropes, they have like they have like signifiers, they have like, as we're talking about, they have like agreed upon story beats and stuff like that, right? So, and of course, some of those things kind of break outside of that, like they deconstruct stuff, like Watchmen, The Boys, stuff like that. Or you even have like reconstructive superhero stories, like Astro City, for instance. It's kind of like more celebratory of the superhero, But it's really interesting because the superhero is a American-made export. It was made in America, and that's what I like about it, because when you look at the prototypical superhero, Superman stands for truth, justice, and the American way. Now, if you look at, and that was before the 1950s with television, it was just truth and justice. But when you get the first TV show, they add the American way post Second World War. He becomes more patriotic character, right? And it becomes more like propaganda. So then you have to ask yourself, like, okay, if it's truth and justice in the American way, what are these characters standing for? So that kind of thing. So it's a really interesting, like, political artifact when you start to kind of pick it apart a little bit,
Yeah, and that's the kind of nerds that we are. So
exactly.
like,
we're some super nerds.
Like for us, when obviously we're looking for support for the backer kit, and like hopefully it goes on and hope that it's successful. But basically, we're just kind of looking at like all the different possibilities that one can do with superheroes, because they do stand for things.
That's right.
right?
It's a
So like,
symbolic notion, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you can like, like just that kind of possibility to like just to explore, like, so that's kind of like what we're kind of hoping for, is sort of like a Lion Man kind of universe. And like maybe it'll probably, like I was just talking about, I was just joking because somebody was just like, All in the Family had like 7 spin-offs, right? Like it's like the most, and I was like, yeah, that was like the Norman Lear verse, right? So it's
Yep.
sort of like a
That's exactly what it
like
was.
a Lion Man verse where we can explore all these kinds of different things just within this universe, and then kind of like spread out and do other things that we want from
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Because at
Because I
first
want
I
to be.
wasn't really interested in superheroes. Because in all honesty, from like high school up until I started publishing again, I didn't really read comics, right?
Mhm.
But then just kind of looking at just the possibilities of all the things that you can do because because they're such an American thing.
Right.
Like, what
And,
does
and
America mean to us, and what does it mean to other people? Like,
there we
that's
go.
like you can just do that even if you just have people with, or even while you're having people with superpowers, like beating the shit out of each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, and that's kind of like where our heads are at. So
No,
like
that's a
if
very
people are
interesting.
interested in that kind of thing, then I hope they do actually support like the whole Lion Man
Okay.
thing, just because like it's just like a really one of the things that says like the past is our playground, and that's kind of like what we want to do, is like have like a really massive.
Okay. Just a couple more questions and I'll close it out. First, y'all said superhero stand for something. So what do y'all think Lion Man stand for?
You know,
Truth, justice, and the all Negro way.
it's funny. I think it depends on the version of it, because what I like about it is we created these different offshoots. I think originally, it stood for creative freedom, right? Because if you think about it, All Negro Comics was the first Black anthology of comics put together, right? And then think about what would have happened if the second and third and so forth, collections would have came out. It could have been the flashpoint for an entirely new industry for Black creators in our country, right? But it was stifled by racism and about really really devious capitalist impulses. You know what I'm saying? So there's a scholar named Sadia Hartman who used to teach out here in California, and she came up with this idea of she used to call it critical fabulation. And so what she did is she would look at like the archive, which is what we're looking at, right? We're looking at the comics archive, and then we would build connections based off of that. You know what I'm saying? So I think um, we're actually like carrying on some of the initial ideas around creative freedom and the possibilities of the medium. I think that when I think about Lion Man, from my perspective, it definitely represents the power and the freedom of the Black imagination, unfettered.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, I would second John in that, and like for me, it's just sort of like the possibilities when you actually like own your own voice, right? That's sort of like the whole. Like I'm pretty anti-capitalist, but like ownership is like really
No.
important.
it is.
Like and that's what All Negro Comics just kind of represents, right? I mean, it represents like the post-war hope that they had, that aspiration, and just like, hey, we are at a point where we can start, really trying to. I mean, the Negro Leagues was like the real big example of that, and it's just sort of like all those different possibilities and all the different spaces that were created out of nothing, but also out of like taking this pressure cooker where we didn't have much movement, and like taking like that little bubble of air in that pressure cooker and expanding it for as long as you possibly could. Like to
Yeah.
me, like that's kind of like a lot of when you're talking about like creative freedom, and just that whole like you are like the entire culture saying like you are powerless, and they're like, but we have this power,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like we have the power of our culture, like, and we can
That's right.
create it. And like to me, like that's like really beautiful. Like it really needs
Yeah.
to be celebrated.
Okay. How did y'all choose the stories to go into this project?
Huh. I think that was pretty organic. We basically were creating things and said, wait a minute, we actually have a collection. I hate to say it like that, but it was like, we were kind of doing our experiments and stuff. And, you know, the stories started to just connect, and it was really organic. It wasn't like, oh, we need to plan to do this, this, and this. We told the stories we wanted to, and that was so cool about the old school anthologies. A lot of times the stories wouldn't be connected, so we were just like, oh, okay, well, let's put together the book. And before you know it, we had a whole 120 some odd page book.
And I needed, as a publisher, I needed a spine. Yeah. So,
yeah, he needed a spine, exactly.
Yeah, I needed a spine. Like that was literally. Like,
yeah, as long as it's big enough to make a spine, I think about 120 pages is that's good.
Yeah, that's a fairly decent spine. But yeah. I mean, and that's as John said, like that's the spirit of like what those things were. So, like in a way, you're being consistent. Oddly enough, by being like having totally different stories out of
the reason, like for instance, did you realize like the reason why a lot of those anthologies had illustrated stories in them is because of something dealing with the post. It made them count as like magazines.
Yeah, that's still true. Yeah,
yeah, and so it actually changed how they were sent or something like that.
Yes.
I was like,
yeah, because you don't. I think it's like you don't have media mail with magazines.
Yeah, see.
Yeah. So they have to be books. Yeah, that still holds.
Okay.
Like 80 years later.
I think
that's crazy. So I was mailing magazines out. It won't be media mail.
Right.
Wow. That's probably why they don't come in packages. They come like straight up. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question for this segment. What's keeping you from getting the serials? Because you're talking about keeping the serial numbers going for the book or for Lion Man. What's stopping that or preventing that?
No, I mean it's just you're a small business. You take.
Oh, and I thought it was like some kind of publication issue.
No,
okay.
No. It's literally like we're doing this thing. It's an experiment.
Okay.
Right. The limitation is always like how much what your bandwidth is and what your pocket.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's literally it. So
it's
seriously. Like people are like, we're like, hey, we did this Lion Man. And they're like, yeah, no.
We got a lot of stuff.
A lot of times that actually doesn't stop me, but
No,
so.
my computer's about to.
It's good. Die. So before it dies, where can people?
Plug it up.
Last segment, digging the crates. Being a collector of vinyl. You dig through the vinyls and music. For the songs. The Iron Maiden stuff, and also on comics do the same thing. So I'm finna dig through this interview and find out more, a little bit more information. And just one question I got. We talked about it briefly, but why is it such well? Because I read comics and I know about writers and stuff. A lot of writers, they write in comics now. I don't know if I spoke to while the camera was on, but I said I had Brian Hill on the show, and he was screenwriter in comics. But also, I see professors writing comics as well. So why is that a thing?
Yeah.
Well, since you're a professor, I guess.
Writers write. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and sometimes you take on like I was just writing an audio drama because I'd never done it before. You know what I'm saying? I'm interested in the format. You know what I'm saying? And it depends. Like Brian and people like Eve Ewing, they're getting hit up by like Marvel. You know what I'm saying? So they're like, hey, Marvel comes to you, and they said, hey, I want you to write Ironheart or I want you to write Blade. Do you turn that down?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So some of it is like, hey, I want to see what take I can do on this character.
Is it because they're more layered writers, like Bill was saying?
I'm not really sure. I think with Marvel, sometimes or like some of those bigger writers, they're clout chasers, right level. You know what I'm saying? So it's like somebody's famous, like they had Nadia Corafor, who's like a really famous like science fiction writer writing Shuri, right? They want to sell books. You know what I'm saying?
And of course, Ta-Nehisi Coates.
There's Ta-Nehisi Coates, exactly. He was writing Black Panther. He's pretty doggone famous. You know what I'm saying? And so what they're doing is like they'll look at someone's work and say if they like it. It's not like the writer is saying, hey, I want to go and write Blade. No, they will find you. That's actually how they work.
Yeah, John's saying that I'm not famous.
You're infamous. You're infamous. Well, for me, is I started writing like intros and smaller like analysis pieces for them, and I guess kind of segued into doing comics. You know what I'm saying? So that's how that happened. Well, all of it's about about moving units. So if you have like a little bit of fame on a name, they might actually have you writing some stuff, even if you haven't written, especially even if you haven't written a comic before.
Okay. Well, that's all I got. Give everybody a pitch about Lion Man real quick, then I go ahead and close the show out.
John?
Oh man, I knew you were gonna do that.
All right. Well, as I said, Lion Man, we're remixing, reimagining, and reanimating of one of the first black superheroes that we've ever had, and he was black owned and black operated, I guess. So this is like another one of these FUBU kind of projects. So so I hope that people like join the celebration that we hope that this project is. So that's why we have the backer kit. So if you could please visit the Adventures of Lion Man at Backer Kit and contemplate backing it, because we would actually like to do a lot more with like the hidden treasures of like black culture, and this is like one of our vehicles to do it.
Yeah,
it worked for me.
That was great.
All right, so where can people follow y'all at and purchase some of y'all works or check y'all out?
Let me see. I mean, Rosarium, we have the website, rosariumpublishing.com. We're on TikTok, which is starting. So that's, I think it's Rosarium Pub. Instagram is Rosarium Pub. And I'm starting to, since I have to do TikTok, I'm putting that stuff on YouTube too. And that's like Rosarium Publishing, I think. And then, Rosarium also has a Facebook page.
Okay.
That's it. That might be it. No.
So you can find me at johnjenningsstudio.com. And you have all my essential socials there, and you have links to my books and things like that you can purchase. But yeah, johnjenningsstudio.com, and you can find me.
Cool. It's been great, guys. I learned a lot, man. Definitely be backing this book. Once I figure out my backer kit password, but I definitely would copy it, and I appreciate it. Have y'all on.
As I said, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.